My friends, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we are once again in a small English town in the West Midlands. More precisely in Kenilworth. It is my first time here and I already like it. And the reason why we're here, it is to visit the famous Kenilworth Castle. One of the finest castle ruins in the whole United Kingdom, whose construction began more than 900 years ago. A true medieval masterpiece. So, as usual, make yourself comfortable and enjoy the show.
Because people were coming in the car just walking straight through this place, so it's going to get damaged anyway.
So they closed it?
You can see, if you look at it, you see where the soil has been put there.
Because I want to go in that direction
yeah.
to see it.
Yeah.
And they closed it, like you can't go through. No?
Yeah, well, it's not there at the moment.
Okay.
They buried everything. Mainly to protect it.
Yeah, because on the map it says the ruins of. It's not even an abbey.
Morning.
Morning.
Hiya. How are you? You alright?
They know each other, eh?
Oh yeah.
Ah,
Very well.
I didn't know. On the map it says ruins.
Yeah.
The ruins of St. Mary's Abbey.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it's still there or not.
Oh no.
It's just like the church. The church is definitely there.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Oh, I used to ring the bells there.
You?
Yeah.
When was that?
Well, until recently.
Wow. Were you
I was
pre?
tower captain.
What?
I was tower captain.
Stair captain.
Captain, yes.
Wow. How old are you, may I ask you?
How old?
How old are you?
I'm 90.
90.
Yeah.
You look amazing for 90. You still walk
Thank you very
and
much.
you have your friend with you.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Anyway, have a good time.
What's your name?
Peter.
Nice to meet you, Peter, and I really hope you'll have a great day.
And you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping and saying hi. Thank you. Now, what is Kenilworth known for? As I mentioned, Kenilworth is a small market town in West Midlands. I believe the district is called Warwickshire. It is best known for its park, very spacious and beautiful, called Abbey Fields, in which I believe we are right now, this whole area. Also for a small cottage called Little Virginia. As you can imagine, it also has a small garden in which apparently a while ago Sir Walter Raleigh, most probably I butchered his name, apparently planted the first potatoes in England. Also for a very old church and abbey, both of them are over 750 years old, St. Nicholas Church, and if I understood correctly, the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey are somewhere here, I believe. Maybe it's in that direction, I'm not sure. Also for a place called Stoneleigh Abbey, which was initially a Cistercian monastery converted into a family manor, which is basically the main residence of a noble family. Of course, this happened after the dissolution of the monasteries, and it was called Cistercian, or it was initially a Cistercian monastery because it belonged to a Catholic religious order named after its founding abbey, from my understanding, but also for the more famous Kenilworth Castle and its Elizabethan garden, a massive Norman keep built in the 12th century, and an Elizabethan garden that dates back to the Tudor era, which could only be built by a very rich and powerful noble who, of course, was crazy in love with a queen. In case you wonder, we are going now to the castle, and this street is called Castle Hill, and like many other small towns here in England, all of them, when it comes about their churches or their castles, the abbeys, usually the street has the name of what's there. Almost all of them have the same type of names when it comes about streets. This is Castle Hill, but I can assure you that in other places you can find either Castle Hill or Castle Road or something like that. When it comes about the church, of course, Church Road and so on, which is very interesting. So I'm coming from the Castle Hill, and what I see now is Castle Road, obviously because that was a hill that led to the castle, and this is just a road. It's written there. Castle Road. So because it's early in the morning, the castle is not yet open, but there is an alley that goes right around the castle, and I want to take advantage of this because we can also see the walls and its keep. It's right in the sun, but hopefully you'll still be able to see it. And if you might wonder, or even if you don't wonder, I'll still tell you what was here pre-Kenilworth Castle. So before the first stone was put in place in the 1220s by the Normans, some sources claim that here it was a defensive earthwork or a wooden fortification built by the Anglo-Saxons, so more than 1000 years ago. But this structure was destroyed, this early wooden fortification built by Anglo-Saxons was destroyed when the wars between the English King Edmund and Canute, or Cnut the Great, started. As some of you know, those were some really deadly wars, and some sources are claiming that the fortress pre-Kenilworth Castle, the wooden one, was destroyed during that time. As a consequence of those wars, Cnut the Great would end up becoming King of England in 1016. Fast forward to his death in 1035. Once he dies, his two sons would follow him on the throne in quick succession. So he dies in 1035, and his two sons, I believe for 6, 7 or 8 years, followed him on the throne, Harold Harefoot and Harthacnut. And in 1042, Edward the Confessor becomes King of England. And because he had no sons when he died in 1066, the famous Harold II, or Harold Godwinson, becomes King of England. He was the last Anglo-Saxon king of England. He took the throne, I believe, in January. So for about 9 or 10 months, it didn't last long, because as you know, in October, on 14th of October, the same year, 1066, he lost and he is defeated in the Battle of Hastings. 14th of October 1066, he died in that battle. As a consequence, William the Conqueror has now control of the castle, because of course he becomes king. So in 1066, the end of that year, the Normans now have control of the castle. When it comes about William the Conqueror, he was quite fortunate because he had 4 sons. Some kings, when they died, had no sons, unfortunately. So, as I mentioned, 4 sons: Robert Courtois, Richard of Normandy, William Rufus, and Henry, his youngest son. When William the Conqueror dies in 1087, his son William Rufus takes over the throne and becomes King of England. He is known as William II. Fast forward, when this one dies in the year 1100, his brother Henry takes over the throne. So now Henry becomes King Henry I. He is now King of England and obviously has control over everything on this land. Something that I also wanted to mention, but I didn't know exactly when was the perfect time for it, was that around the castle, or maybe from above, the view from above will help us to have a better perspective of this land around the castle. But initially, this castle, around it, had a lake, and probably the best representation that I found, and I see it here as well, is this one. You see, this is how apparently used to look. So this whole area, this whole land that now is land, used to be filled with water. So it's very possible that the land behind me, this whole area that is filled with greenery, trees, and now different trails, it's very possible that this area was filled or covered with water. King Henry I was an educated and decisive ruler. He was the only brothers who was literate and fluent in English. With other words, the only ones from the 4 brothers of William the Conqueror who could write and speak fluently in English, in the Old English, of course. And what he does in 1120s, he grants the area in Kenilworth and the permission for a castle, for a stone wall castle, to be built here in Kenilworth, to his Lord Chamberlain and Treasurer Geoffrey de Clinton. And maybe some of you know, Lord Chamberlain and Treasurer at that time were 2 of the most senior ranks in the royal household somebody could have. With other words, the history of Kenilworth Castle starts in 1120s when Geoffrey de Clinton decides to build this amazing Norman fortress in the northwest of this small town called Kenilworth. This is how the history of Kenilworth Castle starts in 1120s. Now this is what I called a vast empty land, and more than 800 years ago this whole place was filled with water, as I mentioned previously, but I guess from here you can get a better grasp of how wide this area around the castle was. So we are now standing on the Tilt Yard Dam, a dam built in the 13th century, and for more than 400 years this dam held back one of the largest man-made water defense in Britain. Basically, remember when I showed you that picture with the water around the castle, and I believe this is the entrance, the long entrance from that picture, and obviously it was surrounded by water. As you can see, it's quite steep. I have decided to take on this route before literally entering the castle's courtyard, because I wanted to tell you more about Geoffrey de Clinton. So basically, he's known as one of the men that King Henry I raised from the dust. He was loyal for so long to the king. This is why he was being given the land and the permission to build this amazing castle in Kenilworth. He also builds Kenilworth Abbey, which I believe initially was called the Priory of St. Mary the Virgin. So really important achievement. As you can imagine, for so many years these buildings were part of this community, and they still are. So in a way, although he started from nothing, raised from the dust, that's how he is known. He eventually ended up building one of the most luxurious castles ever in Britain. Huge walls, thick. This is just to reinforce the structure all over the walls. I'm not really sure where this path will take us, so as you can tell already, I'm as curious as you, but I can't wait to see what this path will leads us to. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, that is basically Castle Hill. Remember, we were literally on that side. I was standing on that pavement. Behind this tree, now you can't see it anymore obviously, or somewhere there, somewhere here, is the sign saying Castle Road. So basically what you can see on this tower, these are arrow slits. This is how they are called. That's an arrow slit, that's an arrow slit, probably that's just a window or as well an arrow slit, but usually arrow slits are as tiny as this one. So obviously you only need a small area in order to see. You don't need such a big window, because otherwise you risk being taken out. And here it's not straight. Usually it's some of the towers are straight, but this comes a bit in the exterior, so basically it's more stone to reinforce this tower and its structure. So this is the famous Mortimer Tower. Let me go on this side. So it was built by King John around 1210, 1215. Very famous actually. This whole structure called Mortimer Tower. I'm not sure exactly how tall it was, because of course now it's destroyed, it's damaged.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense, perhaps. Yeah.
Morning.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay.
Now look how deep and how thick these walls are. And here as well, an arrow slit, like I told you. And this is another room. I'm not really sure what's here actually. Wow. Maybe this would be a place to store some weapons, I believe, because in the towers, usually the towers are for defense, so as you can tell, they need weapons for this. Initially, it was a motte and bailey castle. As you can tell already, considering the Normans at that time built this kind of fortresses all over England. It was surrounded by a man-made lake, a huge one, which was drained. So, as I mentioned previously, was drained in the 17th century, following the defeat of the royalists in the English Civil War. We talked about this on this channel previously. In 1650s, 1640s, starting there, there was a big uprising between the royalists and the parliamentarians. And as you know by now, the parliamentarians won. So the royalists, meaning the kings, lost. That's when Oliver Cromwell, he led the parliamentarian forces to victory, and like many other castles from that time, they suffered the same consequences. This one, for example, was not fully destroyed, but the man-made lake was drained at the request of Oliver Cromwell. The castle's keep and its walls are made of sandstone from a nearby quarry. So it saved a lot of time, but especially it lowered the cost of building this castle and offered a relatively strong protection, honestly. I believe there were 2 floors initially when it was built. So this is the keep, the castle's keep, and it was the main area of residence, either for visitors or for people that were literally living here. And I believe they had different rooms where they can attend meetings, stay for the night, or also attend parties. It was really, really impressive. I'm not really sure exactly how tall it was, but from what I know, initially there were 2 floors once it was finished. So we are now in the inner court of this castle, and as mentioned, the keep, this one right here on the right side is the keep, then the Great Hall, which I'll tell you more in a bit, the one from there, state apartments. This one's right there, and the one on the left is called Leicester's building. Again, Robert Dudley built it, and I'll tell you more about it as well. So this whole area is the inner court. Very impressive, honestly. The large grid windows that you can see behind me were added by none other than Robert Dudley in 1070 or 1071. And again, without a doubt, they are one of the most representative aspects of this keep. The castle is vast, imposing, and even today it still looks like a fortress, although, let's be honest, it's in ruins. But hopefully just by looking at it and walking around, we can make an idea how it used to look 600, 700 years ago. I feel like I'm walking straight into a movie. So that was the entrance. There is no roof currently, and then this is the second room of the keep, which in my opinion used to be a very tall hall. Again, without a roof, but you can already tell that from the entrance you go here. This is the exit towards the garden. What I find interesting is that, as some of you know, at that time, when it comes about the masonry, it was a very common practice for the masons to inscript their initials in the stones. So I believe this is a great example of exactly that. We have this wall full of inscriptions. I believe some of them are initial, maybe some of them are not. I'm assuming like 700 years people would still come here and scratch these walls. I can only assume. Alright, we are still in the keep. I believe this is the main building of the keep. Here must have been some big and very tall apartments, and these are just some balconies, the one that we saw when we were downstairs. Look how tall it is. As I mentioned to you, the windows, the grid windows, which you can also see them here. As mentioned, again, a very clear representation. The castle, Motte and Bailey Castle, surrounded by walls. This is the Bailey, this is the Motte, this addition. Then this is the Mortimer Tower. I mean, it was added later, and obviously the lake surrounded it. Wow. As you can tell, today is packed, so I'm gonna try to do my best to show you everything I can. So this was the keep built in the 12th century. And I guess now we should go and visit the hall, because I have something to tell you about this structure. But first, apparently there were also some kitchens here, very big, very tall kitchens as well, in the same style with the keep. So the kitchens were built, or the kitchen was built by John of Gaunt, which I want to tell you more about it, in the 1370s, and was one of the largest in the medieval England. This is like a good representation, I believe, how it used to look at that time. You see the chefs here preparing the food. They have all their tools, the cutlery and the pans and everything. John of Gaunt, an English military leader, a statesman, Duke of Lancaster. Through his marriage with Blanche of Lancaster, he inherited the castle and built the Great Hall in 1370s. And make no mistake, he was one of the most richest and most powerful men in England. In fact, at his peak, he was the second richest and most powerful man in England after the king, King Richard II. In today's money, he was basically a billionaire. In fact, John of Gaunt was the uncle of King Richard II. After it was finished, the hall from Kenilworth Castle was the biggest in England, third only to Westminster Hall and the hall from Windsor Castle. Let's check the Great Hall of Kenilworth Castle. Very tall, very tall. All of this was the hall where they organized parties. They had different meetings, tables full of food, all sorts of food for that time, as you can imagine, and everything was very extravagant. I can understand a bit how these walls or this structure was by looking at it. As you can see, these curvatures were shaped outside of the wall. I can only imagine how impressive this was back then, with this whole pylon standing beneath. And that whole wall, again with grid windows, and here must be a chimney, or must have been a chimney, because again you can tell by how it looked on this side. But I see it has one on the other side as well. It has the same structure, as you can see, on that side and on that side. It looks the same as this one from here. Basically, these two sides are identical. I wonder what we can find here. Oh, I see. I see. This was definitely a tower here. I see the stairs, but as you can tell already, it's gone. I'm not really sure what was here. So we saw the kitchen outside of the hall. So this one, definitely there was no point for this to be a kitchen. Maybe it was a room. Again, I can only assume to store some clothes or some other things, I believe. Okay, now I can tell you for sure this is a chimney. So if this is a chimney, it means that they needed this room to be heated. Could be also a room where some of the guests were staying overnight, but I'm not really sure, honestly. Although considering the chimney, it might be the case. So from here basically you can see the surroundings better. And again, the windows from the hall, you can see how they were on this other side. Very, very impressive. Only one or two are still standing, and three with that one. Now I want you to imagine water all around this castle. All this land that you see that's lower than the moat on which the castle is built. Actually, this is the moat. Then the whole bailey and the walls, everything was surrounded by water. Wow, very dark here. It says here, the strong tower cellars are at the base of the strong tower and were used for the storage or foodstuff. And you can see the ceiling. It has a very distinctive pattern with these round columns, curved columns. Here as well. What I told you about the keep is visible here. 2 floors, I believe it had. Some arrow slits you can see at the top. And now let's try to make our way at the top of this tower. So the great hall that we saw a minute ago was central to the palatial rebuilding of Kenilworth in 1370 to 1380. Actually, I believe this was really a chimney. I can see it now. A cut-away reconstruction drawing showing the possible arrangements in the Great Hall in the time of John of Gaunt. So apparently that was a chimney, according to them as well. Do you think I can fit in this tower? Most probably yes, but I'm not sure if I can go out. Wow, guys, look at that. This is an arrow slit. I believe it was narrower, this gap, and from here you can basically have 100 degrees view. Everything that happened on this area of the castle you could see, and the view is really impressive. The beautiful garden, which we will talk about at the end. Here is the view from, I guess, second floor. I don't even know where we are now, actually. From here you can see the hall, or part of it. I literally have no idea where we are. Must be a different room in the tower, and here's a different room, another one. With a different view, of course. So the mare, from the 30s to the 17th century, the countryside into the middle distance was covered with a great artificial lake, as I mentioned to you. What I'm going to tell you now is an event that took place in 1260s, the siege of 1266 more precisely. We're going to talk about this now. And at this point in time, in the 1260s, everything that I showed you in this video so far wasn't here, except the keep, which is that one from there, its walls, and of course the mere or the mare or the lake. That being said, so the keep is a very important part because it was the only building, the only structure that was on this side at that time. So in the 1260s in England takes place something called the English Civil War of 1260s, or the Second Barons' War. And basically it was a huge rebellion between the nobles led by Simon de Montfort and King Henry III. So the royalists were led by King Henry III, and Simon de Montfort was leading the nobles. Now, what's interesting, even to me, when I dig deep into this subject was the fact that Simon de Montfort actually marries King Henry III's sister, so he was his brother-in-law. Long story short, nobles led by Simon de Montfort wanted to reform how the king governed. From what I understood, in 1253, King Henry III gives Kenilworth Castle to Simon de Montfort, which was a huge risk because in 1265 Simon de Montfort, together with a huge number of barons, rebel against the kingdom. So although initially King Henry III wanted, let's say, to make Simon de Montfort happy and to keep him on his side, that's why he gives him Kenilworth Castle, the ownership of the castle. A couple years later, 12 years later, Simon de Montfort with all his barons rebel against the kingdom. And the reason is a common one, I would say, when it comes about these rebellions at that time. Basically, King Henry III was in debt, his kingdom was in debt, and in order to continue to live a lavish lifestyle, he relied on taxation. So of course people rebel because taxes were so high at that time. However, Simon de Montfort was killed in 1265 by the forces loyal to King Henry III, led by Prince Edward, at the Battle of Evesham. Then King Henry III tries to regain control of the castle, of Kenilworth Castle, of its keep, because the keep was the only building on this side at that time. But it is said that his messenger comes back without his head. That's when King Henry III decides to attack Kenilworth Castle on 25th of June 1266. That's when the siege of 1266 started. Inside the castle, servants, women, children built enough stock to last them for months. Outside, literally outside of these walls, King Henry III, with a huge army, had large trebuchets, and they were able to throw huge stone balls at the castle. What helped the people in the castle last that long was also the lake around the castle. However, thousands of people died fighting for their lives. Eventually, on 14th of December 1266, King Henry III regains control of the castle, which means that Kenilworth Castle was now in the hands of royals. And this siege that lasted 172 days is known as the longest siege in the English medieval history. Perhaps one of the most famous stories about Kenilworth Castle is that one between Robert Dudley and Elizabeth I. And an interesting fact that probably not a lot of people know is that Robert Dudley and Elizabeth I were childhood friends. Basically, he was born in 1532 and she was born in 1533, so 1 year apart from each other. Basically, they were close friends from the beginning, childhood friends, and I heard that they even had the same tutor. Fast forward to 1558, Elizabeth I becomes Queen of England. 17th of November 1558, and she was only 25 years at that time. But guess what happens the next day? The next day, on 18th of November 1558, she appoints Robert Dudley in his first major royal role, Master of the Horse, just one day after her accession to the throne. In time, Robert Dudley held plenty of roles in the kingdom, therefore he becomes extremely wealthy. He is known as the first Earl of Leicester, but more than that, Queen Elizabeth I's favorite. Therefore, in 1563, she granted the ownership of Kenilworth Castle to Robert Dudley. Therefore, starting from this point, Robert Dudley is the new owner of Kenilworth Castle. And because Robert Dudley was extremely wealthy, he spends a fortune transforming the castle into something more spectacular than it was until then. One of the most luxurious castles in Europe at that time. And because we are here, I want to show you the garden. This is an Elizabethan garden with a marble fontaine, as you can see here. But just if you look in details, these alleys made specifically for Queen Elizabeth I. Later additions, I believe, were done by different owners. However, the garden, everything that you see here in terms of plants and the marble fontaine were added by Robert Dudley after he became the owner of the castle. Just look how beautiful these stairs are on that side, in front of the keep, of course. But now probably the most impressive building Robert Dudley built for Queen Elizabeth I is the Leicester's building. So we are going back to this three-store building. This one from here. Because the reason why this building is so important is that here the famous party of 19 days took place, where apparently Robert Dudley tried to impress with everything that happened at that party and with everything he built from his own fortune at Kenilworth Castle, including this amazing place that is still standing, or at least let's say barely standing, because basically it's in ruins nowadays. I don't know what was this, maybe just a basement to store some food, or might be as well some rooms for guests. bit. Looking at that wall, you can see this was a floor held in place there with a window. This was basically the entrance to this room. Must have been a massive room with the floor here. Yeah, I guess this is a different view of the same room because I can see the same walls. I'm almost 100% that the floor, the tiles, the wooden tiles, the massive wooden tiles would have stuck in these spaces that you can see here. So most probably down there was another floor or a basement. This was a floor very tall, as you can see. And here I believe must be something similar, but without the roof, of course. The roof is gone. I see a chimney there. For sure that was a chimney. Big window. It had like 3 pairs of windows, grid windows. Now we're going on the first floor. I believe this is the first floor, if not the second. Wow, massive windows, as you can see, huge windows. Wow, this must have been a very tall room again. You are now standing in the first room of the Queen's most private apartments, it says here. So this is the Queen's outer chamber. And it was destroyed in the 17th century in the English Civil War, alongside other parts of this castle. Wow, check the views. Again, towards the Great Hall. This wall right here is completely gone. I assume this was a window, judging by the other wall as well. There was another wall there, which you can't see it anymore because it's gone now. And now we are going towards the last floor of the building. The very last floor, the 4th one. Nice view though. Again, the windows were massive, so I assume they brought in a lot of light considering how big they were. Nice view with the keep again. And this is it. This is the last floor. of the building. Leicester Building and the Great Tower. So it was designed to mirror the 12th century Great Tower, which was the initial one. Apparently Robert Dudley builds all of this in order to impress Elizabeth I, and the story culminates with a very famous party, and the rumors are that he spent £1,000 per day for this party, which in today's money would be the equivalent of £350,000. It was the most lavish party at that time. So we are now in the Queen's bed chamber. Basically, this was, as it says here as well, the most important part of this building, because it was her room, Queen Elizabeth I's room. This was built by Robert Dudley in order to impress her, and eventually for her to say yes when he proposed to her in the famous party of 19 days from 1575. Thousands of torches light up the castle. The best food you can imagine. Loads of theater displays. The most famous people in England attend this party, among which Elizabeth I, of course. Everything you can imagine was top class. From the events, from how the place looked like, and also to the people that attended. 19 days party that took place in July 1575. Robert Dudley apparently spent a fortune per day on this party just to impress Queen Elizabeth I. I don't think we saw this room, however, after everything we saw upstairs, this can only be the basement of this 4-story building. They've built a maze here now. Really impressive what they did with this building, how they reconditioned it in order for us to be able to access it and understand better how it used to be back then. After 19 days that lavish party spent here at Kenilworth Castle, apparently she did not want to marry him after allegedly he proposed to her, and she left Kenilworth Castle and never come back here. However, they continue to have a good relationship throughout their lives, and also she was devastated the day he died. So their relationship continued to be a good one, at least in the eyes of the public. We might never know what was behind the closed curtains. However, Queen Elizabeth I was really devastated when Robert Dudley died. So we've come a long way, but now I want to show you also Leicester's gatehouse, which apparently was as well built by Robert Dudley, at least the entrance, new entrance to the castle. And it says here that an entrance passage wide enough for carriages ran through the center of the building, where there is now a bay window. So let's check it out. I always like these doors. It's clearly broken here, as you can see. It doesn't look like the other side, but this wooden door must be original, I believe. This is unbelievable. So apparently this room contains the only remaining pieces from the lavish interiors created by Robert Dudley. I believe R is from Robert and L from Leicester, because he was the first Earl of Leicester.
Yeah, like bits. It's like going to store with. You put it like this. It's simple.
This must be original from that time. Look at the details. That's amazing. I don't even know what's this. A child on a druid face or something. And this must be a depiction. You see? Because we talked about him so much in this video, probably now it helps if you have also a representation of him, like exactly how he was, based on a portrait from about 1560. This is Robert Dudley with Queen Elizabeth. Of course, separate portraits. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Kenilworth Castle, widely recognized as the largest castle ruin in England. Along the years, plenty of wealthy owners expanded it until it became luxurious and spectacular. I would say almost all Kenilworth Castle owners were driven by this desire to show off, to impress others. So the castle was not only upgraded for survival or for defensive purposes, but also to show off its owner's status. According to many, the siege of 1266 is the longest siege in the English medieval history. This was a time where for 172 days King Henry III tried to regain control of the castle. And also the castle is known for its 19-day summer party in July 1575, where the famous Robert Dudley tried to impress Queen Elizabeth I and marry her. Lastly, Kenilworth Castle is without a doubt a great place to visit, full of history and full of mystery. I guess that was it for today. Thanks for watching until the end, and as usual, I'll see you in the next one.